coming at you for the week of May 25th. We are going to be doing removable partial dentures 101 this week. Once again, my name is Cory Lambertson. I am the product support supervisor here at Whitmix Corporation, and we have Bryce Hiller on the other screen. Hopefully you'll see him in a second. And he's going to go ahead and cover RPD design, RPD order form creation, and then we're just going to do just a traditional RPD today. Tomorrow we have a flexible design, and then on Friday we're going to be rocking the flipper design. So that's pretty exciting. Once again, my name is Cory Lambertson. Bryce, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Cool. What is up, everybody? Yeah, my name is Bryce. Most of you know me, but I am in tech support here at Whitmix. And like Cory said, today, really this week, we're going to be going over the partials module in 3Shape. And I actually really like this module. I think this is probably the one I think is the most fun. I don't know why. I just think this module is super fun to use. You get to kind of piece together all your different components for your partials, and it's a really fluid piece of software. So yeah, we're going to be designing basically a cast partial. Now, fair warning before we dive in, I am not a partial framework designer. I'm really a fixed guy, but we're going to go over the software. So if you send me comments saying that I'm designing it wrong, I don't care, because I know I'm designing it wrong. I already know that ahead of time. But the purpose of this is to really just show how the software works. You know, I could probably use to read a few books on proper cast framework design, but you know, there you have it.
You and me both good, actually, for that.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. We're not gonna talk about scanning today. In the past 2 months, we've probably gone over scanning like a dozen times. Yeah, if you need to know how to scan something, we have a ton of webinars on that.
Yeah.
Okay, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me see here. This happened last week
I
as
am
well.
now the host.
Oh, there we
There
go.
we go. I am now your host. I am your gracious host. All right, so let's share. Which one? This one? Can you see my screen? Are we good?
Yep.
Awesome.
I can see it.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead. I've got a scan for a partial on my desktop, so we're just gonna go ahead and go over the order form and then import the scan and then jump into the design. Also, if anybody has any questions at any point, don't ask ever. Just kidding. No, type them in. And Cory will probably be fielding those as we go. Just feel free to interrupt me because I tend to ramble. So just
Will do.
Ask away. Ask any questions. If you want to criticize my design, whatever.
I plan on it. Oh wait, was that for the guests?
Yeah. Any and all, I welcome your criticisms. Okay, so we're gonna start a new order form. We're just gonna call this RPD. Whoa, TRPD. RPD webinar.
There we go.
All right. Again, we'll just call this RPD webinar. Oh, this keyboard's really difficult to type on. Okay, so I have got a maxillary cast already scanned in. The order form for a cast, like if you're wanting to design just like a cast framework, super easy. Literally all you do, select any tooth on your arch. Any tooth, doesn't matter which, and then we're gonna select removable. From here, we will want to select a corresponding material. So if you're gonna be printing it, I would probably go with model material. Now, if you're going to be outsourcing this to like someone like 3D RPD, Bertram, anyone that might be like doing SLM or casting and casting it, printing and casting it for you, you may need to get their DME files. Like I know 3D RPD has their own DMEs that you can import. Bertram, I assume they probably have their own as well. But for today, since we're going to assume that like, hey, we're going to 3D print this ourselves, I'm just going to go with model material.
Yep.
If you have an antagonist, which on a cast framework, I don't. But if you have one, up here in the top right-hand corner of your order form, you would need to change this to antagonist model, which will prompt you then to be able to scan in or import an antagonist. All right. So, yep, we have RPD frame selected. I'm going to click OK. And now I need to import that scan. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to import scan.
That's pretty easy. What if somebody wanted to add like a dummy tooth to it? I should have asked this beforehand. I apologize. Would you just select like on just a like just go back to anatomy on the order form and then choose like Ponic?
Yeah, so it depends on, and we're going to get into this later in the week with some other types of partials, but so yeah, if you wanted to create a cast partial with like a denture tooth, basically, you would select the artificial tooth.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted a monolithic, you can also do that. So if you want basically the framework and your teeth combined in one file, you can choose the like the anatomical, or I'm sorry, the like the library Pontic, like the full contour Pontic, and that's
Okay.
going to produce a monolithic restoration.
Gotcha. So if you wanted to have an actual like, let's say if you're going to have this some chrome cobalt or whatever you're casting in, and you wanted one of the teeth to actually be out of that material, that's what you would add as an option.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Now, why?
Trying to find the demo case.
Yeah, I don't know why it's
I believe we have demo cases on the Z drive. I don't know if you want to.
I've got a scan on my desktop. Why is it not there it is. Got it.
Okay, cool.
All right, cool. So I have a scan here imported. And let's go into design. You can see we are on the 2020 version. No, actually, I don't think there were any changes to the 2020 version, but you know, we're about to find out. But I think
can't remember.
the RPD module I think's pretty much been hammered out for a few years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
I
right.
think
So yeah, go ahead. What's up?
I was gonna say I think the RPD module is like the most, I guess, the truest CAD software from 3Shape. That's like actually CAD itself.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see here in a minute when Bryce gets into it. We did have a question that came up. It says, from Henry, quick question, maybe a little off topic. We have your Auto Flash G171 light curing machine. One of the UV trays that we have started to yellow after a month of use. What is the lifespan of the UV tray, and what difference does it make between the non-UV and UV tray? So you want to use the UV tray to allow UV light to come through. The non-UV actually has a filter in it. The trays themselves, depending on usage, they will start to yellow over time. Now, if it gets to the point where you can't see through it at all and it's like extremely cloudy, you'll want to replace the actual tray itself. But it's yellowing and degrading from the actual strobes of the lights itself. It happens. We had one that we kept using in our R&D laboratory that actually cracked at the bottom. That was a good question, and I hope that answered what you were looking for there, Henry.
Cool. Thanks, Cory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just like every other 3Shape module here at the top of the screen, we have our main steps that have to be completed. We have by default skipped the prepare step, and we are in the surveying and blocking out. So if you've used the dentures module, this is pretty much the same thing. We're going to choose a path of insertion, and the XYZ coordinates of this scan must have been like this, where this was the Z-axis, so that's why it came in like totally the wrong way.
Yeah.
Usually it'll come in perfectly vertical to basically the orientation of your scan, but this one came in all kind of jacked up. So we obviously need to change this. So Best way to do it is to find a view that you want to use for your path of insertion, and then simply click the Set from View button over here on the left-hand side. So it's going to update those undercuts. And if you want to change, you can do this as many times as you need to. We can change it again. Kind of optimize that path of insertion.
So for this would be traditionally if you were actually surveying your model with an actual analog survey itself. Now there is a little bit of a trick. Now we don't have the case on here, and Bryce, you may have, maybe you were going to cover it. I may be jumping the gun, but something that you can do to tie analog to digital is you can actually drill a little pin in the base of the model itself after you survey it, and you can actually set let's say just like an old burr that you're no longer using for your handpiece, and make it in the same orientation as your traditional survey, and use that as a surveying pin itself for when you scan in. Then you would minimize the block out on that pin itself.
Yeah, it's a good little life hack there.
Life hack.
Life hack. Hashtag life hack. Okay, so once we set our path of insertion, we can click next. And now it's going to go ahead and generate our block out wax. Now, one thing that I probably should point out, back here in the blocking out section under settings, we can set our block out angle. So you can go anywhere from 0 up to 10 degrees. So this is the angle at which it's going to block out. So if you set it to 3 degrees, it's going to block out all of your undercuts plus an extra 3 degrees on top of that. That's going to be the default. The one difference from the dentures module is dentures module has an option for none. That is not an option here in the RPD module. You have to block out at least 0 degrees. Okay, so now we have our virtual block out wax. So what we can do from here, we can use our sculpting tools. And if we want to sculpt this block out wax, we can do so. And the nice thing is it's going to keep those undercuts, the kind of like the heat map of those undercuts, which is nice. So you can see, exactly where those undercuts are for your clasping.
And just while Bryce is attaching or going through and sculpting on that right now, if everybody, while they're watching, if you look at the right hand side, there's an undercut depth chart, which actually shows, so in yellow, the amount of that undercut is 0 to 250 microns, or a 1/4 millimeter, and then the lighter orange is a 1/4 millimeter to a 1/2, and the closer you are to red, the closer you are to 1 millimeter undercut.
Yep. So you can spend as much or as little time as you want blocking out. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time just because this is a demonstration. Let's see.
And something else to consider with for any user that has an E2 or an E3 scanner, that actually has the ability to scan with texture, which if you actually drew on your cast itself, it would show the actual, you could actually show the markings that you drew on the cast for your RPD. This was actually, looks like it was scanned on maybe a previous generation. This is from 3Shape's actual demo cases themselves. Most likely it was scanned in with just the monolithic, the mono scan itself, not showing it in the true, texture scan. So we're not going to see any of those actual drawings on the cast itself. But that is something that's extremely helpful. And if you're in the market for getting a scanner, I would definitely, if you're looking to do RPDs, at least get an E2 or greater. Just a little tip.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so once we have finalized our block out wax, we can click next. Actually, I'm gonna get rid of some of that. Let's go next. And now we are kind of in the actual like design. So over here on the left-hand side, we have all of our different components, and we're gonna go down through these one by one. So obviously right now we are starting with the retention grids. Now there are several types of retention grids in here by default. Hole, that's the diameter, so the 2.5 is 2.5 millimeters. We've got 2 millimeter hole, 2x2 grid, 4 by 2.2 diamond, torus ladder, plane, and then resin gap. Now you can change these in the control panel. So if you go into the control panel and you go into the RPD section, the retention grid section, you can change any. So you can make these, if you want to make the hole larger or smaller, like on the hole 2.5, you can change that. You can make the holes more spaced out or closer together, and you can change the shapes, etc. So there's a lot of customization options that are available to you in the control panel. So let's just do a 2 millimeter diameter hole. Now to actually start drawing our first retention grid, I need to actually click this little outlines button right here. And now we can start on our first retention grid. Now, like Cory mentioned, this is probably the module that's closest to a true CAD software. And the reason he said that is because this is pretty much completely open. There is no like step-by-step procedure necessarily when it comes to each of these components. So you can draw any retention grid you want, wherever you want. Doesn't have to be in any order. You can draw it literally anywhere. So that's really kind of nice for maximum customization for these RPDs. It's probably part of the reason why I like this module so much. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, it gives you freedom to do whatever you want. I mean, you can literally design just about anything. Like for example, I've seen some people even use the RPD module for creating a crown lengthening guide.
Yeah.
And it's just an easy way to use the software to its, I guess, outside of the scope of what it was meant for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of cool little tricks out there that you can use this for outside of RPDs. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw another retention grid here. So we're drawing a loop, just like most things in 3Shape. Whenever you're drawing a spline line, we're drawing a loop. So you're going to end it wherever you're going to end the line by clicking on the first point that you created. Now, if I right click, some of you are probably going to be familiar with these options. If I right click on one of the blue control points, we have the option to remove this point, delete the entire line, and fast edit line. Fast edit allows you to basically redraw by clicking and dragging. It's kind of cool. All right, let's go on to the last one. Finish the line, and then you can come back and make any necessary adjustments. Realistically, I would have spent a lot more time on the blocking out, but
yeah,
I'm not gonna spend 15 minutes doing that in our 1-hour webinar. All right, cool. So once we're done with our retention grids, I'm gonna click next, and then we're gonna go to the major connector section. So you can see once I click next, it's gonna go ahead and actually generate those visually, which is nice, because you can actually start to see what you're doing. All right, so here in major connector, we have some different options. Major connector being the primary, that's what we're going to be using. There's also a anatomical bar, standard bar, and then we also have occlusal rest. I always thought it was kind of weird that occlusal rest is in the major connector section. I always figured it'd be in the clasping section, but it's in the major connector section.
yeah.
And I'll show you how those work momentarily. Then we also have a window, which I'll be using in just a minute. And I also have a custom resin gap or a relief zone. So you can set an amount here of relief. So if you want like an extra 100 microns of relief somewhere, you can draw a line around that area. And that's going to create an extra 100 microns of relief within that spline. So that can be useful. I'm going to go ahead and there's only going to be one major connector by default. And once I click on the draw outlines button, you can see you can change some of the different settings. So we've got substructure thickness, wax thickness, and stippling protection. Now I always get confused on what these two settings are. Cory, are you able to go over that? Because I always get them mixed up.
So the substructure thickness should be the actual thickness of the bar or the major connector that we're creating. The wax thickness, you know, I guess I never really thought about it. I wonder if it's a like a relief zone underneath of it.
I don't think so. Let me see if I can pull up exactly what it is.
I'm gonna pull it up on my end if you wanna.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just going to continue drawing our major connector here.
Oh, interesting. They released a 2020 version of the manual, even though the
Okay.
2020 software wasn't available yet. I wonder if they just released it.
Now you'll notice you'll notice that I'm overlapping. So everything in this module has to be connected. So I'm overlapping with my retention grids, which is realistically something you're going to have to do. It'll look okay once we actually generate it. It's not going to be like, it's not going to look weird or bad or anything, but everything has to be connected. So they have to overlap. I'm going to go ahead and let's bring some of these points in.
So the wax thickness is the thickness value of the wax layer, which together with the reinforcing wax layer constitute central thickness of the entire structure. For lingual bars and major connectors is usually a stippled wax sheet. So it sounds like it's just an extra layer of wax on top of the structure itself.
Okay.
That
Sounds about right.
would accommodate for stippling, if you were to put it.
Okay. Cool.
Makes sense, kind of. Yeah.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to click preview, and it's going to generate our major connector. Now it's going to cover the whole palette. So what I'm going to do is put in a window. Now the nice thing about this module is there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I like to just draw an entire connector and then draw a window in the middle. If you really wanted to, you could draw you could draw several major connectors. So you could draw a major connector from this retention grid to this one, and then from this one to this one, and then from this one to this one. It's probably more work than is necessary, but
Right.
that's something that's really nice about this module is you have a lot of different options. So there's, if there's something kind of weird that you need to do, chances are you're going to have the right tools to do it because it's just a very open, module.
Yeah.
So now we can draw.
Let's see here. I'm just checking. See, once again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them at any time.
So we can draw a window. I just simply clicked on the window button to do that. And so now we have the palette of that RPD open.
Nice. Hey, what would be the window for?
Well, something like this, so like on a maxillary. You don't really want to cover the entire palate with metal for many different reasons, aesthetics being one, and it's just not really necessary. It'd be uncomfortable. So the window allows you to draw this whole thing as one major connector and then just put a window in the center of it.
Yeah.
Um, there may be other practical applications that I'm not thinking of right now. There probably are. Um,
Imagine drinking coffee. So something I've heard that a main reason why people like to have the windows, so they actually get you can actually feel the temperature of whatever it is you're
mm,
drinking as well now. Something else that will help out, and you actually get to feel your true rugai and gingiva, so it should give a little bit more sense of feeling as well.
yeah, I would imagine there's a pretty serious comfort factor in there.
Yeah.
So some of the other things we can do in here, I want to go over the occlusal rests. So same thing, substructure thickness and wax thickness. So I think the two of those combined are going to be your total thickness is what it really sounds like to me. And let's go over drawing an occlusal rest. We'll draw one right here just for the sake of demonstration. So what I'm going to do, you can start anywhere. And I'm actually going to bring this down and connect it with my retention grid. So this can act as kind of this kind of act twofold as like a occlusal rest and even a guide plane. Click preview. Sometimes you can get a message when you try to create an occlusal rest and it'll say like area or says like or rest too small or occlusal rest too small.
Yeah.
Usually that'll happen if you try to just draw it on the rest area. And that's why you want to bring it all the way down and actually overlap it um, with your retention grid or whatever other component you're combining it to. Now you can see when I previewed that we didn't have a very strong connection with the retention grid. It was kind of just connecting in a tiny little area right here. So that's why I went ahead and extended it down in this area to get a better connection to our retention grid. It's still kind of wonky. Sometimes you got to play with it a little bit to get it to generate the kind of like overlap connection that you want.
Yeah.
That's why that preview button's nice because it allows you to see what you're actually doing without going on to the next step.
While that's loading, we did have a question come through on our Facebook because we're showing it live on Facebook, wondering if we had this in Spanish. We do not have this translated in Spanish at this point in time.
Okay, so at this point, once you're finished with your connectors, your rests, we can go ahead and click next and we're gonna continue on. Now, one thing you'll see, obviously this all looks a little bit rough. That's okay. We're gonna have the chance, you can see it down here after clasping, to smooth everything out. So if stuff looks rough, that's okay. We're gonna fix it later. So now we are in clasping. Now there's a lot of different clasp in here. To be quite frank, I don't know what the situations when you would use most of these. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not a partials guy. I simply know how to use the software.
Yeah.
So those of you that are partials labs, I mean, a lot of labs are specifically like all they do is design and cast partials, which is pretty cool. That's what I did. So when I was in the lab, um, we had a guy that's all he did was cast partials. So we would just send him the model and say, hey, this is what the doctor wants for the framework, and he would send it back. So those of you that's what you do, you're going to know what all these claspings are for.
Yep.
But I'm just going to go with a G clasp just because it's the default. So now when you want to draw clasping, this is one area where people tend to get a little mixed up. When you draw a clasp, so I'm going to click my clasp button. In pretty much every other aspect of 3Shape, when you draw a spline line, it's a loop. So you basically draw a circle and connect it back at the beginning. You don't do that with clasping. So with clasps, basically what you do, you're going to draw a single line. And to end it, you're going to click on the last point again. And then it's going to go ahead and generate your clasp. And then from here, what you can do, if you click on that spline line to select the clasp, and then what we can do is we can hover over these points, one of these control points. And if I hold my shift key, you can see I have an icon that pops up there. And if I use my scroll wheel, I can actually narrow or widen. Widen, not whiten, widen.
Can you whiten that for me?
Can you whiten that clasp? Uh, you can actually narrow or widen that clasp. You can also, if you hold control, you can thicken it and you can thin it out. So that's kind of cool too. So if you want to make these a little beefier, you can go through here, just use that control key and just beef them up a little bit. If you want to taper the ends a little bit more, you can taper them. So then if you wanted to do like, I call them Y clasps. I don't know what the technical term is, but you can even draw. So if we want to do like a Y clasp right here, obviously the blocking out probably wouldn't be optimal for that right now, but that's okay. I can start this clasp here in the retention grid, and I can bring it down, and then I can end it, and then I'm actually going to grab another one, and we can do like a Y clasp.
There you go.
That was kind of cool. And then you can obviously come back and make any adjustments to your clasp. Maybe beef up that connection a little bit. Another point in here. So there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways to get creative, use these clasp options to really achieve what you need. Let's see. Cory, is there anything you can think of with clasping that I might be not thinking of?
No, I mean, I think you covered that you can customize them in the control panel, correct?
Oh yeah, no, good point. Yeah, so yeah, like Cory said, you can customize these. You can actually come up, maybe if we have time at the end, we'll show it where you can do that. But you can actually completely like design your own wax profile, your own clasping profiles, your wax profiles. So
Yeah.
you can come up with any shape you want, really. You can actually like draw the 2D profile of it, which is really cool. And you can choose if you want to taper one end or both ends and how much you want to taper them, and it's pretty cool. If we have time at the end, we'll hop into the control panel and show that.
Cool.
I'm gonna go ahead and click next. So now we're in sculpting. So this is where we're gonna smooth everything out. Typically the smooth tool is what I'm gonna be using primarily in here. So like all these like little junctions, like right under here. Actually, that one wasn't too bad. But the smoothing tool is what I'm primarily using in this step, just to make everything look a little bit cleaner. The wax knife here is this just the same as the wax knife in every other 3-shape module. So add, delete, or add, subtract, and smooth. Once you're done smoothing things out, I'm gonna click next. Now we're in finishing line. The nice thing is the software will draw a green line where basically where it's predicting your finishing line to be. It's using the major connector and the retention grid to create that. You can follow it, you can not, doesn't matter. But there's a standard and then there's a wide. I'm gonna stick with the standard finishing line. And again, I'm gonna click the outlines button. And I'm gonna start on the right side. And just like the clasping, this is not a loop. This is gonna be just a single line. Click the last point again. And now you can see it has generated our finishing line. Now I drew that right to left. If you draw it right to left, it's always gonna face the correct way. So you can see if I rotate this around, obviously this is the orientation we want because the acrylic's gonna come over and it's gonna be a smooth transition down onto the metal. Now the next one I'm gonna draw left to right and show you how to reverse it because it's gonna generate not properly.
I just learned something new today.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure that out. So now it's facing the wrong way. So obviously that ain't gonna fly. So if you need to reverse it, right click and then on any of the control points and then just reverse spline. But yeah, if you draw right to left based on your view, it will always, it'll always face the right way. So if you look at it from the lingual and draw right to left, we're golden.
Hmm.
I'm gonna click next. Look at that part. Look at that design. Look at that. It's flawless. Okay.
I'm sure any of the RPD labs that are watching today are probably having a stroke.
Oh, they're laughing at me right now. They're
Yeah.
laughing. Who is this clown? Okay. So now we are up in basically the final steps here. We have another sculpting phase. I usually don't do anything here. I usually do all my sculpting in the first sculpting phase. But we also have some pretty cool things we can do here. Here we have attachments. So if you're going to add any attachments to this, you can do so now. The one that I think people might be interested in, if we go to the partials group, and then we do let's do the post spring. So you can actually add this spring. Let's get it so let's change the orientation so it's not having a seizure with the view direction. So what we can do here, we can add this post spring based on our view. Rotate it a little bit, shorten it. Now I'm gonna merge it. And then I'll go back and show you like kind of in slow-mo how to get it properly. But now you can add a post spring. So
That's cool.
yeah, so for retention, for teeth or what have you. Now attachments in 3Shape can be a little tricky if you don't know what you're doing to get them to add properly. So we have different groups here. So we have basically different categories of attachments. I'm using the partials category. And then where it says attachment, these are all the different actual individual attachments that you have within that category. So I'm using the RPD post cylinders. They spell cylinders weird, like it's British.
Cylindrous.
Cylindries.
Cylindrous. Cylindries.
And now the big thing is the orientation. So right now it's like it's all over the place, right? I'm moving my cursor and the thing's like totally wigging out. Change this to post spring. It's totally freaking out. So the reason it's doing that is the default orientation. So basically, surface normal is try to get these right. It's analyzing the surface orientation of the data where your cursor is located, and it's placing the object perpendicular to that surface. I don't ever use this. We also have insertion direction, so it's going to lock it based on your insertion direction. That can be useful for certain applications, not really for this one.
Right.
Group direction is basically going to just maintain the XYZ coordinates of the category that you're using. But the one that I use is view direction. So it's basically going to place it based on your current view. And I use this for almost every single attachment almost, just because I find it to be the easiest. So let's go back here. Let's say we want to place one like, I don't know, right here. I'm simply going to click to kind of throw it down there. And then we can use these control points to kind of morph it. Now, the other cool thing you can do, if you right click on it, we can add a base, which is kind of nice. Give it a nice solid base. So once you have it oriented where you want it, you do actually have to click this play button to merge it with your model. So click the play button. Once it turns green, like everything else, then you are golden. But I'm gonna get rid of them. All right, so that's attachments. This last option over here, this paintbrush tool, surface selection. So this is where we tell the software where we're gonna want to apply all of our stippling. So I can delete everything by clicking this X button right here, clear selection, and then I can just simply paint areas where I would like to apply stippled wax. So if we just wanted to do kind of the anterior half, you can do that, or you can do the whole thing. It is up to you. Once we've made all of those selections, I'm going to click next. And now we're going to be in the pre-manufacturing. So if we open all of these drop-down tabs, some cool options in here. We have tissue stops right here. This doesn't really look like a tissue stop, just looks like a cylinder. But if I click that, I can set the diameter here. It's going to default to 4 millimeters. And then I simply click to add another one and click. Let's click preview. Now we're going to have tissue stops underneath of those retention grids.
Now this is something for those that have not seen this. This is something that has been added to the tissue stops for, why can't I think right now? For custom impressions. Yeah. Which we are doing here in a couple weeks.
Yes. So now you can see underneath we have tissue stops here and here. So it's kind of cool. We also have a support bar. So you're probably not going to use this on a maxillary, but this can be really useful for a lower where you don't have this kind of, posterior support. You can actually add a support bar. You can set the diameter here. It's going to default to 2.5 millimeters. Then you simply click a point, and now you've got a support bar. So this is going to be useful really on a lower. You probably, for the most part, always want one, I would say. For 3D printing, it's going to give you more stability in the printing process. For casting, it gives you, but probably a lot better chances of success when you're casting it. I mean, really, even SLM, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine for SLM they probably use a support bar to prevent warping. I don't know for sure though. I could be wrong.
I think they would, just because with SLM, it's you're essentially heating up a product.
Yeah.
And then, well, as soon as anything heats up and cools, you're going to see a little bit of warpage or So that stability bar, I think, just about for anything for additive manufacturing is going to be beneficial.
Yeah, I would think so too. The other thing we can do here in accessories is in the stippled wax, we can choose the type of stippling we want. So there's going to be, I think, 9 patterns by default, 3 mediums, 3 fines, and 3 coarses. Let's just click coarse type 2 and preview and see what that looks like. Now, if you don't want to apply any stippled wax in the previous step, just clear everything from the selection tool. And it won't apply anything in that case. You can
Nice.
see it only applied it where we used that selection tool. Under settings, linear space. Trying to remember exactly what that does. We might need to look that up in the manual as well. It's only 30 microns, so it's going to be pretty insignificant. Let's see. I think one of my biggest like little minor gripes with Reshape is the wording of things.
Let's see if I can find it as well where you're looking for it too.
Or liner space, not linear space. Liner space. Let's see who finds it first. It's a race. No, it's not even coming up for me. Oh, there it is. Okay, sets the default value of additional space between a prosthesis and a scan to compensate the frame manufacturing tolerance. Okay, that makes sense. So basically it's just giving you an extra 30 microns to account for any manufacturing tolerances. I would say, Corey, what do you which manufacturing process do you think this would be most beneficial for? Probably if you're going to cast it, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's essentially it's a manufacturing tolerance is it's a very nice way of saying manufacturing error, and so it sets a default value for additional space between processes. It's I mean, I think we're going to see that for just about any application.
Yeah,
I mean,
30
30 microns
microns.
is so minimal anyways.
Yeah.
If you're to put it to 0, I doubt you'd see a difference in your fit, unless you're under a scope at some point.
Mhm.
But I mean, it'd probably be most beneficial for 3D printing, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And even milling, but milling really you're gonna have to worry about undercuts. That's gonna be your biggest issue if you're to try to mill this out like an
Yeah.
acetal frame.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's click next. And that's finalize. Now we're just going to inspect my well-designed partial framework. Think about opening a partial framework slab.
Yeah.
But that gives you a pretty good idea of how the software works. So
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, in my opinion, this is probably the most fun module, and I would even say the easiest to learn. And even if you're let's say you're a fixed lab, like you do crown bridge implants, you're not really in the removable space. Later in the week, we're going to be covering flexible partials, acrylic partials, flippers, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
if you're a fixed lab and you already have a 3D printer, um, I definitely think you should tune in to Wednesday and Friday, because this software makes it super easy for like a fixed lab to start cranking out like flippers, for example. Anybody can design a flipper. There's nothing to
Yep.
it.
Yep.
And it can really add a lot. It can help you break into the removables market, offer your doctors another service.
Yep. I agree.
Since we have the time, I want to go into the control panel and show the options for customizing the wax profile strips.
And
Do we have
while
any?
Bryce is, oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do we have any questions while this is opening up?
I was actually just going to say we don't yet. If anybody has any of the questions, please feel free to type them in. We did get, Henry did send a response, and I did type it back. Another question in regards to the curing units, the auto flash. You want to know where can you get the replacement trays? You can get that directly through our customer service department. If you just call our 1-800-626-5651 extension 2451. The item number is 71233 for the actual tray that goes in the bottom of that curing unit. Beyond that, though, we haven't had any other questions come through. So Bryce, you did a good job. No critics in the audience today. And let me check the Facebook page as well, see what's happening on there from the live view. I don't see
Cool.
any messages or questions there. So doing a good
Cool.
job.
Let's go into the So I'm going to go into wax profile strips right here under removables. So all of our default clasps are, gosh, I really hate that clasps. I really hate that word. All of our default clasps are in here. It's kind of hard to say.
There's no S on the end of it, by the way.
Clasps.
Oh,
What's the
clasp.
plural? What's the plural of
Oh
clasp?
wait, no. Yeah, sorry.
It's clasps, right?
Claspes.
Someone should change that. That
I think it's
plural.
I think it's claspi.
Claspy.
That's what I just stole that from Will. He's sitting
It's,
next door, and I
it's
heard him.
easier. It's easier to say. Clasps. Hate it. So here's all of our different clasp strips profiles. Dang it. So you can edit any of the ones that are already here, or if there's one that you like as a good like starting point, you can copy it. So here in this window is kind of like just a nice little 3D kind of view of what you have. And then right here in this grid window, this is where you actually draw the 2D profile of it. I'm gonna go ahead and copy the G clasp. So now I have G clasp copy. I can name it whatever I want. Let's just call it Bryce's clasp. So now that I've made the copy, I can start changing what it looks like. So over here in this little window, I can zoom in. I can grab these points. So let's say we want to make this like a little bit taller, more like a train tunnel. And we want to, you'd probably never do this, but just for the sake of demonstration, let's put a flat top on it. Kind of like, almost like trapezoidal. So now you can see it's reflected those changes over here in like my little, my 3D window. Now, some of the other cool things you can do down here, there are some different settings that you can change. First, you can set how you want to be able to use this as a clasp, a minor connector, a finish line, what have you. So you can set this to be whatever kind of wax profile strip that you want. Keep it at clasp. You can choose to round the ends. If you turn it off, obviously they're just kind of like squared off, like you just take a samurai sword and just cut the ends off. It's pretty cool. There's a rounding radius factor. Oops. So if we zoom in, let's get kind of a better look at it. So it's basically just lengthening it and rounding out the noses a little bit more. The tip thinning factor, this is the taper. So if I bump this up, it's not letting me use my scroll wheel. It's annoying. If I bump this up to
You have to go manual with it.
100%, there's no tip thinning. If I start to decrease it, you can see it's getting
narrower on one
thinner.
end.
Now we got a little toothpick. So the percentage basically means what percentage of thickness do you want the tip to be, basically. Tip start position along strip. I think this is changing where it starts. Yeah, so if you want to basically taper both ends, you're gonna set this to 50%, because basically what it's doing is it's putting the start position halfway through and it's gonna thin on both sides.
Yep.
0 will leave it, or 100 theoretically. 0 will leave it so that one end is full and then one end is tapered. Elevation upon surface. I'm actually, have you ever used this one, Corey? I think maybe what this does is it changes I think
Probably where it actually starts on the surface of the um, actual RPD. It probably applies like extra smoothing when it's defaulted, and then if you tell it to do elevated from surface, it probably actually starts applying it beyond the
yeah,
surface.
yeah, I think you're right. And then down here at the bottom, we have automatic relief, so you can add extra relief in between your clasp and whatever it's attaching to, or like
Nice.
basically your model. So there's a ton of ways that you can customize these. Here in retention, we can customize the retention grids as well. So if we want to change this one to greater distance in between the holes, you can see now they're more spaced out. You can change the diameter. See how low it can go. It can go all the way down to 1 millimeter for the holes. So that's pretty cool. You can change the shape. So grid diagonal, grid, torus ladder, and then plane is just solid.
Yeah.
And then resin gap, which is just basically a spacer. And that's for the most part in the control panel. Those are going to be most of the customization options. You can add in and like change stippled waxes. I don't know anyone that's like actually added in their own pattern, but you can change the like the density and the height, the default height of it, which could be maybe useful if you want more intense or like more noticeable stippled wax. You can increase the pattern height a little bit. But that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for the control panel. Cory, what am I missing?
I think you captured really everything from here. Just another side note, I know Bryce said it, but I want to say it again. If you're going in and messing with the control panel, I always make a copy of whichever one I'm going to be messing with. So whichever, if I'm changing a rest, or if I'm changing the stippling wax, or if I'm changing whatever it may be for just about anything, I create a copy of it and then I manipulate the copy. So if I screw up in any way, I can go back to the default and still have my original settings. Just a little tip from there.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think you did a really good job, Bryce. Thank you. I appreciate it. We have another couple minutes. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to toss them in. I don't see any in here at this point in time. I'm trying to see if there's any on the Facebook page as well. Looks like everything's covered there.
Sweet. Cool.
Well, that was easy. 101.
Yep.
RPD 101.
So what are we doing tomorrow then?
So
What do we have
tomorrow we're going to do flexible RPDs. So it's going to be that next step for creating like the Valplast style RPD frameworks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody. This was fun. Hope everybody at least took something away from it useful. I think so this is recorded, so this will be available both on Facebook, because we are live on Facebook right now, as well as on our website. So these are all free, so if you want to go back and watch them, please do. And yeah, other than that, we'll be talking to everybody tomorrow.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks all for watching. Appreciate your time today, and talk to y'all tomorrow.
Awesome. Bye everyone.